Christo Grozev, investigative journalist who's on Russia's wanted list. So, Christo, 2.5 hour call. Putin makes steep demands. There's no full ceasefire, which Trump had wanted. He did say there would be no bombing of energy infrastructure. It appears that's already been violated. Now, Trump says the call was productive. Zelensky says Putin's game is to weaken Ukraine to the maximum. Who's right?
Well, in this particular case, clearly Zelensky is right. I mean, the Trump was productive for Putin, both for a domestic audience, because a lot of the posturing today that we saw from Putin was meant for him to project the image of the winner for a domestic audience. I mean, before the actual call began, there was a staged press conference or an event where Putin appeared to be telling the audience that he's making Trump wait for the beginning of the call. That was clearly, again, an alpha male message that he wanted to send. And then the call ended with something that only Putin needed, which is the end of the attacks on energy infrastructure. I mean, let's not forget that over the last couple of months, Ukraine has been quite successful with drone attacks on refineries and Russian money-making machines, essentially, that are supporting the war machine for Russia. Whereas the attacks on Ukraine's infrastructure, energy infrastructure, have been pretty exhaustive, but in the past they haven't been as important in the last couple of weeks or months. So the end result of the call today was both a domestic win for Putin and essentially Putin getting a breather, a month during which he can continue shelling Ukraine and expanding the territory that he can call the status quo of Russia-dominated territory, because the main goal for Putin at this point is to maximize the territory that is de facto under Russian control by the time the actual peace negotiations start.
Yeah. So what are you hearing, Christo, from your sources about how Putin and his team view Trump's negotiating tactics?
Well, I mean, everybody that I've talked to in Moscow is more than thrilled at Trump's inability to see the detail and to essentially give away a lot of the asks that Putin has without even realizing he's giving them away. I mean, the whole conversation about or the hints that we heard yesterday from Trump about some of the nuclear stations being up for debate, that clearly suggests that Putin has kind of made it an ask and has received an assurance that he's going to get control of the Zaporizhia station. Everybody that I've spoken to in Moscow suggests that Putin has a granular understanding in direct one-to-one conversation of what the little details are that are not little, that actually will give Russia huge wins. Whereas Trump is kind of the big picture guy. He has one goal: to come home with some sort of a truce or some sort of a peacemaker kind of an image, but he doesn't really pay attention to the details.
And Zaporizhia, of course, I mean, crucial power plant for Ukraine, largest in Europe. Now, Trump and Putin discussed normalizing relations in this call. And I'm obviously, Christo, just to point out, before Putin's Ukraine invasion, before any of this started, Russia was about 1% of American corporate revenue, right? So to normalize relations wouldn't be a benefit for the U.S., right? This would be for Russia. But today, the White House says Trump told Putin about the enormous economic deals the two countries could make. Those are the words that they used. The Kremlin readout of the call included something additional. It said Trump was open to the U.S. and Russia competing in hockey games. And you actually think that matters. How come?
Well, I mean, as I said, a lot of the posturing today was made for a domestic audience in Russia. Hockey is not just Russia's favorite game; it's Putin's favorite game. I mean, the Night Hockey League is something that Putin created, and he loves showing off with his hockey stick. And for him to essentially establish a non-existing prior relationship in hockey championships or hockey playing with the United States is a way for him to message that, you see, the United States, or Trump rather in this case, is doing me a personal favor. So that has absolutely no bearing, no importance to the American side. It has only 100% importance for Putin's personal ego and vanity.
All right. Well, Christo, thank you very much. It's always good to see you.
Russian forces unleashed a new attack across cities in Ukraine in the dead of the night after that nearly 2-hour phone call that happened earlier between Presidents Trump and Putin, a call that ended without Russia agreeing to a 30-day pause on all fighting, something that Ukraine had agreed to. The Russian leader did agree to lay off hitting targets like Ukraine's energy grid or its power plants, But of course, important to note with that spares Putin's energy infrastructure as well. And when you look closely at the two readouts that we got today, one from the White House and one from the Kremlin of the call, the differences are obvious. For example, the Kremlin says that it pointed out that a complete cessation of providing Kyiv with foreign military aid and intelligence must become the key condition for preventing an escalation of the conflict and making progress towards its resolution, aka no more military aid or intel sharing to Ukraine. But the White House didn't mention that demand to stop military aid from the call, and Trump said tonight they didn't talk about it.
No, he didn't. We didn't talk about aid, actually. We didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about a lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
My sources on all of this are the former Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Beth Sanner, and the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, Admiral James Stavridis, who has a new book called The Admiral's Bookshelf. And it's great to have you both here. Beth, when you look at this and the two different readouts here in terms of what this looks like, what does it say to you that one mentions stopping military aid, Trump says they didn't talk about it, and just in general, what were your takeaways from the 2-hour call?
I mean, look, we are looking at the very top of the iceberg, right, in terms of these readouts. We're only getting maybe, I don't know, 0.01% of what this 2-hour call was, half for translation. But nonetheless, we don't actually know what happened, do we? So I don't know if that's true or not that they didn't talk about that. I think that there was probably quite a bit that was discussed. But I think that the main thing I take away from this is that there is one person who's driving the terms of this negotiation. And it is not Donald Trump. It is President Putin. Because if we were taking us back a week ago where we left Marco Rubio saying we're going to present Russia with an unconditional ceasefire and we'll see which one of these countries is a problem for peace. Well, we just found out, but instead he got praise. So these are all Putin's terms.
Admiral Stavridis, how do you see this in terms of, Trump said tonight the next step is a full ceasefire, but do you believe the Kremlin appears to be any closer to that from that 0.01% of the readout that we got, as Beth put it?
Yeah, I think Beth's background at the CIA is showing, and I think she's right, which is to say Putin is kind of playing rope-a-dope here. He's going to try and do everything he can to appease Donald Trump, but at the same time, he really does not want to give up what he perceives, I think correctly at the moment, is a military advantage. So what is he going to do? He'll agree to what is, frankly, a kind of a minor ceasefire sliver of, okay, I won't go after infrastructure, I won't go after electric grid. We'll see. He's launching missiles right now. On the other hand, the big ceasefire, that's still a chimera glimmering off in the distance. Putin is just playing the table right now.
And Admiral, what does it mean for the fighting on the ground, actually, with what Russia did agree to in terms of, Ukraine had actually been making progress on that front, on hitting Russia. So what does this mean for what happens on the ground right now?
Well, let's start with that terrible 5 days where the U.S. ceased supplying weapons, but I think more importantly, Beth will agree with this, with supplying intelligence. That's like taking a boxer in the ring and dropping a full court mask across his or her face. You can't fight if you can't see. So I think as long as we keep the intelligence flowing, we can keep the Ukrainians in the game right here, both on the ground and in the air. The key is going to be whether or not Putin ultimately decides he wants to get to a ceasefire. So far, I'm not seeing anything that makes me confident of that.
Well, Beth, on this front, when you look at this and knowing, as someone who studies Putin and what he does and his tactics, do you think he's just trying to stall for time here?
There's stalling, but there's also positioning. One of the things that I really took away from the Kremlin readout was how much this is framed as two great men who are running great powers, and our role is to have this global responsibility. And so all of this is about rehabilitating Putin, bringing him back into the international community, and being seen at home as being very, very strong. And I think that he is actually succeeding in these ways.
Well, is that part of it? When at the end of the readout, they talked about hockey and having the United States and Russia play hockey again, and rearranging those games. I mean, is that part of that? Is that kind of a sports washing of what we've seen happen with Russia?
I just keep wondering who is Ovechkin going to play for. But yeah, sure, it's a sports. It's a sports washing. It's an everything washing. It is, and we're helping because we are equivocating in our statement. Russia and Ukraine, you know, this war should never have started. There is literally zero penalty for Putin saying no.